Welcome to Handmade History. Hello, welcome to Handmade History. I'm Alicia.
I'm Sonia.
And before we jump into our fourth episode, we would like to say thank you so much for listening. We're super delighted with all the kind feedback that we've gotten. So thank you so much.
So today's topic is Nalbinding, and we're going to talk about how to pronounce it in a minute.
I first learned about Nalbinding in a book by the yarn harlot, Stephanie Pearl McPhee, who mentioned it. And I learned or absorbed that Nalbinding was like an ancestor to knitting. Sonia, have you ever heard of it?
Yes, I saw it, I think, on like an Instagram reel
Ooh.
at some point. And I also, it was like introduced as like ancestor to knitting and crochet.
Yeah. But
it's not an ancestor of knitting. It's something else.
It's totally different. Well, it's kind of different. So I actually tried it. Have you ever tried it?
No.
I tried it because it seemed possible. And it was actually really fun to do. And I liked it. And it felt like weird sewing because you use a needle. And I've read that it's not knotted, which it's not. It's not like a friendship bracelet with a bunch of knots, but it feels like knots. It feels similar, most similar to that, to me, at least the one that I tried, the stitch that I tried. So I thought we would start with a little bit of a Q&A format since there's so much mystery and perhaps misconception surrounding this craft. And then we'll go into more about its history in different parts of the world. So, Sonia, want to kick us off?
Yeah. First question, how do you say it?
Okay. I asked Google Translate how you say it in Danish because this word is a Danish or Norwegian or Swedish word. And Google said you say it Nalbinding. That was the Danish one. Norwegian was very similar. And that word is spelled Nalebinding, and the A has a ring above it, and you just say it a ring, or you can spell it with a double A. And it makes a different sound from English A, obviously. So that word, when it's spelled that way, is said Nalbinding.
It's been anglicized to Nalbinding, and things that are made from it are called Nalbound by Emma Boast of a British company called Knit-a-Val-Near.
Yes, she's a professional Nalbinder and also does a lot of like historic Nalbinding in England. Pretty cool.
Interesting.
So how will we say it, Sonia?
Nalbinding.
Nalbinding. That seems fine. All right. Next question is, what is it? And it translates to needle binding. And it's a method of making fabric using just one needle, like a sewing needle, and a length of yarn.
So you cut a length of yarn, like how in sewing you cut a piece of thread, and then you have to slice the ends together or weave them in at the end. It's a very old method, and it's not knotted, but it doesn't unravel.
That I thought was very cool. It did make learning a bit more frustrating because when I was trying, I would want to undo something, but it's really difficult to undo. So I just would get rid of it and start over. It is also related to needle lace, which is interesting. Sonia, haven't you done needle lace?
So I did tatted lace, which uses like I forget, but it's like a
like
it's
pegs?
Like a shuttle.
Oh,
a
shuttle.
shuttle. And I've also done a little bit of the bobbin lace, but I don't think I've done needle lace. Like it's almost like embroidery lace kind of, right?
Yeah, I think so. We'll have to look this up.
You're literally sewing with a needle and thread, which I have not done. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that does sound very similar to Nalbinding. Okay, so you haven't done it, though you've done other kinds of lace.
Yeah.
All right, next question.
What does it look like?
It looks like knitting, or it can look like knitting. I saw a bunch of different pictures of it. It can look like Tunisian crochet, which is a crochet method that is also known for looking like knitting, or it can look like knitting. It can look very dense and it looks a lot like knitting, I think.
That's interesting.
Yeah. But there are different stitches, so. All right.
How big was the needle you use?
How big was the needle? I used a needle that I would use normally to weave in ends for a sweater. So it's just a blunt yarn needle with a big fat eye. Yeah. Next question is, how is it different from knitting?
So first, you don't use a ball of yarn. You're just using lengths of yarn. You can only use one needle, which we just talked about, which is the large sewing needle.
Mm-hmm.
And because you splice the ends together, it works well for not very tightly spun yarns. So like singles or single ply yarn works well for this.
Yes. However, I read in a great book called A History of Knitting by Richard Rutt that Nalbinding can produce a true knitted structure, but by a different method of manufacture. So this book was awesome. It had a lot of hand-drawn diagrams of different fabrics and what the structures look like. And you can make the exact same structure using Nalbinding or knitting. And he also said detecting whether a piece of fabric has been made with Nalbinding can be difficult. So the way that you can tell them apart is by the way that increases or decreases are made. That's the most obvious way. But yeah, it can be really difficult. So Nalbinding is a method that's different from knitting that can produce the same fabric that knitting does. It is also just a separate craft that can be used to produce a fabric that's also different from knitting. So there's some overlap, but it's different. All right.
A brief history of Nalbinding.
That is what we will do next. So it's not an ancestor of knitting. I thought maybe it was like a Neanderthal of knitting. You know how the Neanderthals lived among the humans? We coexisted with them for a while. However, the metaphor is not really great because Neanderthals are no longer with us and Nalbinding has continued. So,
yeah. But otherwise,
it's a Neanderthal of knitting.
Yeah. So it's very old. There's a fragment found in a cave in Israel, Nahal Hamar, that was about 10,000 years old. However, the oldest needle that has been found is 30,000 years old. And you don't actually need a needle to do Nalbinding. So it could be older than all of those things.
Yes, it would be, I think, difficult based on my very limited experiments, but you could just pull the yarn through without the needle. So fragments of Nalbinding have also been found in China, where the oldest garment, a cap, was found, and that's 3,000 years old. In Germany, this fragment is called the Halsschnur of Bunso. Halsschnur means neck cord, and it was found on a bogman. And the neck cord was woolen, so people thought that it might be a necklace, but it could also have been a decorative edging on a piece of linen because the linen would have dissolved in the bog. So kind of interesting. And then fragments have also been found in the Netherlands and in Italy and Peru, and all of those are from BCE. So in the Netherlands, they're between 3,000 and 1,000 BCE. In Italy, the same time period. And then in Peru, between 900 and 200 BCE.
Cool. So in Egypt, in 200 to 500 CE, there are also the famous Coptic socks, and they are red and have a split foot for wearing with flip-flops. And they are thought to be knitted, but are actually knot-bound. There are several pairs at museums in Europe and Canada, including the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, and they're from the period of Roman rule of Egypt. They're in different colors, including red, brown, purple, and red with yellow stripes. And there's one multicolored one in blue, red, purple, yellow, and green. And all were made from the toe up. 4 pairs in the Victoria and Albert Museum were found in Oxyrhynchus burial grounds, which is a Greek village on the Nile that became a monastery by the 400s in the Common Era.
Yeah, I thought it was fun that they were all made from the toe up.
Yeah. How do you make socks today?
I make them, you can make them from the toe up, but I have never done that. I always do it from the cuff down, but yeah,
I like you want to wear flip-flops.
you could wear them with flip-flops. I also was impressed that they had all these different colors and they did stripes. It's like, I feel like I only do stripes when I get bored, so maybe they were bored. Another example is found in York, England. That one dates from between 800 and 1050 CE. And kind of a fun little tidbit, the stitch that was found on the sample in York, England has only been found in York, and it's called the York stitch now. And people actually teach other people how to do the York stitch at a local heritage craft foundation there. So examples have also been found in the American Southwest.
It's also been found in Mongolia, Central America, Peru, and other parts of the Andes, Syria, Sudan, Sweden, Switzerland, and
so basically, Nalbinding is everywhere. And another book I read that was excellent called Nalbinding, What in the World is That? And it's written by Ulrika Clausen-Buttner. She wrote, there must be numerous Nalbinding textiles that slumber unpublished, unanalyzed, and undisplayed in the archives of museums all over the globe. And many could also be misidentified as something else, like the Coptic socks were. So there's probably even more that we don't know about. Now let's talk about Nalbinding today.
So in the UK, it's a heritage or Viking era craft that people learn in historical settings that is currently experiencing somewhat of a resurgence.
That's how I would say I thought about Nalbinding. That's how I pictured it.
Yeah. But also me too. Like that's how I remember, I think I learned of it as like a Viking
Yes.
craft. So I didn't realize it was so global.
Yeah, me neither.
In Scandinavia, it's a heritage craft that people can learn, but has not necessarily been passed down to them. And it was done until around the 1600s.
Yeah, so I think there it's more like kind of the crafts that we think of as like American heritage crafts, where maybe you didn't learn it from your parent or your grandparent, but you could easily learn it like, I don't know, like hand quilting or something like that. However,
it was actually done all over the world, spontaneously invented on almost every continent. And it has continued to be done today. So, for example, in Papua New Guinea, women today Nalbind basket bags called billums from bast fibers. And in West Africa, it's used to make costumes.
Yeah. So I thought we could maybe talk a bit about Nalbinding in America, since that's where we live. And a fun story that comes with that is the first Nalbinding notation. So the first like written instructions for Nalbinding. So as we mentioned earlier, Nalbinding was done in the American Southwest in the first part of the millennium by the ancestors of modern-day Native Americans. And then Nalbinding may have also come to the U.S. with Scandinavian immigrants in the 1800s. And Larry Schmidt was the man who came up with the first notation for Nalbinding. And he also named stitches, wrote lots of books on Nalbinding, and taught it for many years. And I thought he was an interesting person to learn a bit more about how he learned it, because he actually learned from his parents, but his parents learned it at an organization called Hull House, which offered education and workshops to poor people. And so this was maybe before and during the Depression, because Larry's father actually led a WPA, or Works Progress Administration, program, which was a workshop that had 150 weavers in Milwaukee, and they would Nalbind rugs there also. So Larry Schmidt, who became this great teacher of Nalbinding, learned from his father, who learned from another organization. So just kind of an interesting way that people learn and, like communities learn and forget crafts.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's pretty recent.
Very recent.
Like the 40s. Like, I think of it as, like Viking era, but it was like the 40s.
Yeah, it was around then. Yeah.
So Schmidt's system in the 1990s for writing down how to Nalbind was the first method of writing down this information that was useful to knitters. Other methods captured what the stitches looked like and were used to categorize samples found in archaeological digs. His is also not perfect and can't capture the detail of every stitch. For example, twisting. But here is brief overview of how it works. So U means under, O means over, F means front loop. So F1 means first loop, F2 means second loop. B means back loop. So the same B1, B2. And you could have a pattern like U1, F2, O, F1. And that would mean go under the second front loop, go over the first loop, which is just a made up pattern.
Yes. And you can have as many loops as you want. You could go into the third or fourth loop. You can go into all different loops. This is a way, basically a way of making a pattern. But even the one that I tried had a twist in it. So I watched a video to learn it. I didn't use this written notation. But I had some thoughts after learning about Larry Schmidt and this system. So he made this system in the 1990s. That means that it wasn't written down before that. And so there's this kind of myth that I feel like I absorbed around Nalbinding, that it was like a lost art and that people are now resurrecting it. Of course, we know that it's actually done in lots of places, even now. But this story that I learned is actually only true for a very small part of the world, I think just for the UK. And the global story, the bigger story, is that it's been around for tens of thousands of years. And because we didn't really have a way of writing it down that we know of, it means that people have been teaching it to other people for that amount of time too. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Interesting. Yeah. The only thing too about like how I see it on Instagram, how it's presented is as this like kind of like old lost craft almost.
Yeah.
But it's just another craft in like the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, so kind of two parts. It was never actually lost, not by everybody in the human race. And also, it couldn't have been because there was no way for us to learn how to do it except from teaching each other.
Right. That's cool.
I also thought that it was really cool that all these different fragments have been found all over the world because, you learn about different cultures coming up with different things at the same time, like, democracy or monotheism, but also like humans came up with Nalbinding all over the world.
Yeah. I always think that's interesting of like how that occurs, right? How do people first think to like, it's not really like nodding, like you said, but how do people think to create that? What did people need to do, right? Like, what was the need there? I guess they're like trying to make cloth or something, but
Yeah. Could have been a need. I think some places it might have been decoration too, like the Bogman with his decorative wool thing. I think humans do tend toward wanting to decorate things,
yeah,
wanting to put stripes on the socks.
I do love that. That's hard. Like that, you didn't need to do that, you know? But then with knitting, when did knitting, when knitting came about?
Well, I read in one book that all the Nalbinding, that evidence for Nalbinding predates evidence for knitting, but it's really hard to tell.
Mm.
It's probably another episode. But yeah, I don't know. It gave me kind of a hopeful feeling about humanity. Like, yes, we come up with like war, capitalism, but also we come up with Nalbinding.
Yeah. That is like, I don't know, reading all the places it showed up, it's like, yeah, it's just everywhere. And like even like it's a program in the Great Depression. Like that's interesting.
Never quite died.
No. Now I want to try Nalbinding.
You should try it.
Like I'm intrigued by the not knitting of it because that's what I kept thinking of it was, but
it's not knitting. It's definitely not. It feels a lot more like making a friendship bracelet. It was annoying to stop and get a new piece of yarn.
Yeah.
So that was annoying. But it was fun just using a needle and a piece of string. You don't need to carry around very much.
Yeah. Tatting was like that too, where kind of depending on the pattern, you kind of had to just like estimate how much like string you were going to use.
Whoa.
And like you could always add more, but like you make it kind of a closed loop. I remember it being kind of annoying about that. Like you couldn't just kind of work out like out of a ball of yarn.
Yeah, maybe it's like tatting then. Have to try that next.
Yeah, I have to see what it feels like. It's probably like if you say it's like sewing, I wonder how much it is like needle lace.
Yeah.
Now I want to try that too. A lot of new things to try. Two new crafts.
All right. Well,
Thank you for listening.
you can email us at handmadehistoryhosts, HOSTS, at gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. If you have ideas for crafts we should try or episodes we should do, we would love it. You can also follow us at Handmade History Podcast on Instagram. I am also on TikTok, but I'm foregoing it for the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's too hard.
Can't do TikTok anymore.
You're even the right generation for it. I'm not. I'm too millennial.
And I've been off for years. Too much.
All right. Thanks so much for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Welcome to Handmade History. No, we already say that in the intro. I don't need to say it again.